Camilla expected formality. She expected guarded smiles, carefully chosen words, and perhaps even a colder reception than usual. What she did not expect was to arrive at Buckingham Palace and discover that, according to the official guest list in front of the entrance staff, she was not supposed to be there at all. Her name was gone. Not misspelled, not misplaced, removed. And within seconds, an ordinary palace arrival became something far more dangerous. A royal humiliation nobody could quietly undo. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Camilla stopped at the controlled entrance and waited for the senior household officer to check again. Buckingham Palace, the monarch's official London residence, was hosting a formal reception for senior family members, diplomatic guests, and palace officials. This was not a casual gathering where an aide could wave someone through. The finalized guest list was the approved attendance record staff had to follow, and her name simply was not there. That mattered because omission from such a list did not look careless. It looked deliberate. The Queen Consort first treated it as an administrative error. She asked the officer to search again, then watched his expression change as he checked every page. He lowered his voice and told her the same thing. No authorization, no entry. Her embarrassment sharpened into anger. Other guests continued arriving, and each passing greeting made the delay harder to conceal. She was not merely being inconvenienced. Someone had placed her outside the palace while the event continued without her. Then the officer touched his earpiece and listened. His posture tightened. When he spoke again, his words carried different weight. He had been specifically instructed not to override the list. Camilla did not move. She asked who had given that instruction, but he refused to speculate. The mistake had suddenly become a decision, and the humiliation had become personal. Inside, King Charles received the message quietly. He lowered the reception program in his hand and stared at the aide before him. The king asked one question: who authorized the final list? No answer came immediately. That silence unsettled him more than any explanation could, because several senior royals had reviewed the arrangements before the evening began. Camilla refused to leave. She wanted a name, not an apology. Charles wanted an answer before he acted, and somewhere inside Buckingham Palace, at least one person already knew why her name had disappeared. What looked like a missing name was about to expose something far more personal, because inside Buckingham Palace, nearly everyone involved had something significant to lose. The humiliation at the entrance lasted only minutes, but inside the palace it struck like a warning shot. Charles faced an impossible choice between protecting his wife and preserving the authority of the process that had excluded her. William understood that any intervention could turn a private dispute into a constitutional spectacle. And Camilla, still outside the reception rooms, understood something even more painful. Someone close enough to the crown had decided she should feel the door close in her face. Charles stood in silence as the meaning settled over him. This was his residence, his reception, and his wife waiting beyond the rooms he was supposed to command. A royal function, meaning an official event conducted in the name of the crown, depended on rules that could not simply disappear whenever they became uncomfortable. Yet the king also knew that every minute Camilla remained outside made him look powerless inside his own household. William entered knowing the question was coming. The prince had already taken part in discussions about tightening access to major engagements, arguing that attendance should reflect active duty, responsibility, and trust, rather than family connection alone. Charles asked whether he had known Camilla was missing from the final list. William paused. It lasted only a moment, but his father noticed. The silence felt heavier than a denial. Camilla refused to leave. She sat in a smaller receiving area near the entrance, while an aide offered her water. She did not touch it. Her anger had cooled into something sharper. The Queen Consort told the aide she did not want an explanation from a courtier. She wanted Charles himself. If her husband believed she should remain outside, she wanted to hear it directly from him. Then Anne's name entered the conversation. Princess Anne had reviewed the reception arrangements during the final planning meeting, and Charles immediately asked whether she had noticed the omission. The Princess Royal, a title traditionally given to the monarch's eldest daughter, did not pretend otherwise. She had seen it. More importantly, she had not objected. Anne later spoke privately with William and made her position unmistakable. The palace, she said, could not keep treating personal relationships as automatic permission to enter every official space. He understood what she meant. This was no longer about Camilla alone. It was about whether royal family status could still override institutional rules whenever feelings were hurt. Charles finally closed the folder in his hands. The king said nothing more. He turned toward the entrance and began walking. William watched him leave, knowing the next conversation could either contain the damage or break something that could not easily be repaired. But before Charles could demand that the door be opened, he needed to understand why it had been closed in the first place. The missing name had not begun at the palace entrance. Its origins stretched back to one private dinner 3 weeks earlier, when a carefully managed evening collapsed over a single argument. There had been no cameras, no public statement, and no dramatic departure. Yet those who witnessed the exchange remembered the silence afterward more clearly than the words themselves. Because that night, Camilla challenged William over who had the right to decide the future shape of royal life, and Anne quietly decided a boundary had finally been crossed. Tension had been building for weeks. William wanted major royal events, limited to people carrying defined responsibilities, while Camilla believed those limits risked turning family membership into a test of usefulness. State-facing functions, meaning events where the monarchy formally represents itself before officials or the public, carried greater institutional weight than private occasions. The prince saw tighter access as discipline. The queen consort saw exclusion beginning to masquerade as reform. Anne had grown tired of the blurred line. Princess Anne believed official duty should come with clear expectations, and she had watched informal exceptions weaken those rules repeatedly. The Princess Royal, the traditional title given to the monarch's eldest daughter, wanted fewer private understandings and consistent standards. She did not want family affection deciding who appeared where. Then Windsor changed everything. Camilla challenged William at dinner after he argued that future attendance should be approved according to active role rather than family seniority. She accused him of redesigning the monarchy before the crown was his. The words landed hard. The prince did not raise his voice. He placed his glass down and told her that protecting the institution sometimes meant telling family members no. Charles heard every word and stayed silent. The king believed stepping in would deepen the clash between his wife and his son, but Camilla read his restraint differently. To her, his silence felt like abandonment. William saw it as proof that the conversation had become bigger than one disagreement. No one at the table returned comfortably to the meal. Anne acted after dinner. She spoke privately with the palace official preparing the Buckingham reception list and recommended that the new attendance rules be applied without personal exemptions. She never named Camilla. She did not need to. The implication was obvious. Days later, the finalized list reached William. He noticed the missing name at once. The future king paused, reread the page, and then turned it over without making a correction. That quiet gesture became the decision waiting for Camilla at Buckingham Palace. Now the secret behind the omission was clear, but knowing how it happened only made the confrontation waiting at the entrance more explosive. When Charles finally reached her, Camilla did not ask whether she could enter. She asked something far more dangerous. Did you know? There were no courtiers standing between them now, no ceremony to soften the moment, and no easy answer available. Charles understood immediately that the question was not really about a guest list. It was about loyalty, about authority, and about whether his silence had allowed his wife to be humiliated outside his own palace. Charles asked the nearby staff to step away. The king kept his voice low, but the tension between them was impossible to hide. He explained that the attendance list had passed through several stages of review before the reception. A finalized attendance list was the approved record palace staff used to determine who had permission to enter an official event. He admitted he had not personally checked every name after the last revisions, and Camilla stared at him as if that explanation had made everything worse. Camilla did not accept ignorance as protection. The queen consort told him that decisions affecting her had been made inside his own household without his knowledge, and she had been left to discover the result at the door. To her, that was not merely embarrassing. It was abandonment disguised as procedure. Charles tried to answer, but she cut him off and demanded that he end the humiliation immediately. Charles hesitated. He knew one instruction from him could probably open the door, but he also knew what that would mean. William and Anne had supported the new process. Overruling it in public would make the entire system look meaningless the moment it became inconvenient. The king felt trapped between protecting his wife and destroying the authority of the rules his family had just agreed to follow. Then William arrived. Camilla turned toward the prince before Charles could finish speaking. She asked him directly whether he had seen the finalized list. William did not hide behind an aide or offer a careful excuse. He said yes. The answer changed everything. Camilla asked why he had allowed her name to remain absent. William replied that the list reflected a principle already discussed inside the family. Official invitations could no longer be assumed simply because of personal status. The future king made clear that he had not wanted her humiliated, but he would not apologize for refusing to rewrite the decision afterward. Camilla looked back at Charles and waited for him to overrule his son. Instead, the king asked William for 10 minutes alone. To her, the delay felt like an answer. And behind a closed palace door, father and son were about to decide whether personal loyalty could still outrank royal authority. Royal power rarely announces itself with shouting. Sometimes it appears in a signature, sometimes in an invitation, and sometimes in the decision not to change a name on a list. Behind closed doors, Charles confronted William over what had happened to Camilla, expecting a family explanation. What he received instead was a challenge about how the monarchy itself should operate. The argument was no longer about whether one woman should enter one reception. It had become a test of who could define the rules around the crown. Charles did not waste time. The king told his son that allowing Camilla to discover her exclusion at the entrance had been cruel. The finalized guest list was the authorized attendance roster used by palace staff to decide who had approved access to the reception. Once that list reached the door, staff were expected to follow it. That gave the document force, and Charles knew reversing it publicly would make the process look hollow. William held his ground. The prince said he had not planned the confrontation or wanted her embarrassed. He had simply refused to alter a decision produced by rules the family had already debated. Charles challenged him again, arguing that rules without judgment could become punishment. William answered that a system could not survive if every painful decision disappeared when family pressure became uncomfortable. Then Anne entered. Princess Anne had been asked to explain the recommendation that started the chain of events, and she did not retreat. She told Charles she had argued for the attendance rules to apply without automatic exemptions. The Princess Royal made clear that she would have offered the same advice regardless of whose name was affected. To her, consistency was the point. Anne then revealed the consequence. Several upcoming royal functions were already being reviewed under the same policy, meaning invitations would be tied more closely to active duty, purpose, and responsibility. Camilla had not been singled out for one isolated punishment. Her exclusion was the first visible sign of a broader shift in how access to official royal events would be controlled. Charles fell silent. The monarch now understood that overruling the list would do more than rescue his wife from an awkward moment. It would weaken a policy extending beyond that evening. Yet leaving Camilla outside would turn institutional discipline into personal humiliation. The king finally made his choice. He would not erase the rule, but he would not leave her waiting either. He told William and Anne that he would handle the entrance himself. The door would finally open, but not in the way Camilla had demanded, and what happened next would make the humiliation impossible to contain. Camilla eventually crossed the Buckingham Palace threshold, but the victory felt nothing like a victory. There was no sweeping reversal, no apology delivered before the assembled guests, and no attempt to pretend the confrontation had never occurred. Charles personally returned to the entrance and escorted her inside under a temporary exception. Yet by then, the damage had already been done. She had entered the palace, but for the first time she understood that entry itself could no longer be taken for granted. Charles made the compromise himself. The king did not rewrite the original guest list or pretend the exclusion had been a mistake. Instead, he authorized Camilla to attend as his personal guest for that evening only. A temporary exception meant the existing rule remained intact, while one special allowance ended the immediate standoff. That distinction mattered because William and Anne had fought to preserve a system based on defined responsibility, not automatic family access. Charles had opened the door without destroying the rule behind it. Camilla walked into the reception knowing everyone important understood what had happened. The queen consort heard polite conversation continue around her, but the warmth felt different now. Senior family members remained composed. Guests carried on, yet she could sense the strain underneath the formality. She had been allowed inside, but she no longer felt welcomed in the way she once assumed she would be. Camilla eventually stepped into a private room and removed her gloves. She placed them sharply on a table and said nothing for several seconds. An aide waited nearby until she finally spoke. Being admitted as an exception, she said, felt worse than being refused outright. The words carried more sadness than anger. Charles entered soon afterward. The monarch tried to explain that publicly overturning the policy would have created a deeper confrontation with William and Anne. He reminded her that the rule now applied beyond one evening. Camilla answered quietly that he had protected the process before protecting her dignity. Charles did not deny that the choice had wounded her. Then the king told her the part she had not yet heard. Several upcoming official functions were being reviewed under the same system, and future invitations would be decided individually according to role and purpose. Camilla listened without interrupting. Something changed. The queen consort stopped demanding immediate restoration. She understood that fighting every exclusion could make her appear more concerned with privilege than respect. Instead, she asked Charles for one thing. She wanted to speak with William alone. No aides, no advisors, no king between them. For the first time that evening, Camilla was no longer asking to be let through a door. She wanted to know whether anything could still be repaired on the other side of it. The most important conversation of the night happened after the reception had begun to empty. No household officers stood nearby. Charles was not there to intervene. Anne was not there to defend the policy. Camilla and William sat opposite one another, with nothing between them except the damage already done. For hours, they had spoken through rules, lists, and other people. Now the argument became painfully simple. She wanted to know whether he believed she still had a place beside the monarchy he expected one day to lead. Camilla began without anger. The queen consort told William she did not want another explanation about procedure. She wanted an answer about belonging. Official participation, meaning attendance connected to defined royal duties rather than private family status, had become the principle behind the new rules. William told her he did not believe family ties should simply disappear, but he did believe formal access had to reflect responsibility, purpose, and trust. Camilla listened, then told him what had hurt most. It was not the missing invitation itself. It was the fact that William had seen her name absent and had chosen to say nothing. The knowledge that he had turned the page felt colder than the refusal at the door. She could accept disagreement, she said. What she could not accept was being allowed to walk into humiliation without warning. William did not defend that part. The prince admitted he had concentrated so heavily on preserving the rule that he had underestimated the human cost of how it would be enforced. He apologized for allowing the process to become humiliating. But he did not apologize for supporting stricter boundaries, and Camilla understood the distinction immediately. Then something shifted between them. The queen consort told him she would stop fighting for automatic inclusion at every official event. If her role did not require attendance, she would accept that. But she would not accept being used as an example through surprise or public embarrassment. William agreed. The prince promised that future exclusions involving senior family members would be communicated privately before an event. The policy would remain. The cruelty of discovering it at the door would not. Later, William found Charles and explained what had been agreed. The king listened carefully. He realized Camilla had surrendered an expectation she had defended fiercely, while his son had accepted something equally important. Discipline without compassion could become cruelty. Their agreement prevented a family rupture, but outside Buckingham Palace, the missing name had already become the only story anyone wanted to discuss. By morning, a private palace dispute had become a national spectacle. The question was no longer whether Camilla had ultimately entered Buckingham Palace. The image gripping public attention was far simpler. A senior royal arriving for a formal reception and being told that her name was not on the list. Some saw discipline, others saw cruelty. Some celebrated the tightening of royal boundaries, while others believed no family member should discover such a decision at a guarded doorway. Suddenly, the palace's internal argument belonged to everyone. Camilla sat at breakfast with several newspaper summaries spread before her. She read them slowly, saying almost nothing. Broadcast reports were already reconstructing the entrance delay from accounts given by guests and staff who had noticed the unusual pause around her arrival. The queen consort was not most disturbed by criticism. What unsettled her was something more personal. A moment she had wanted contained inside palace walls had become public property before the mourning was fully underway. Charles reacted differently. The king picked up one paper, read the headline, and pushed it aside. He knew the compromise that eventually allowed his wife inside would never carry the same emotional force as the image of her being stopped. That imbalance mattered. Public memory rarely preserves every procedural detail. It remembers the sharpest moment, and in this case, that moment was rejection. Outside Buckingham Palace, the story became impossible to ignore. A modest crowd gathered near the gates while television crews delivered live coverage. One prominent fictional front page reduced the entire conflict to 4 brutal words beneath an image of the entrance: "Not on the list." The phrase spread quickly because it captured everything people believed the episode represented: power, exclusion, family tension, and humiliation. Commentators split almost immediately. Some praised the stricter system as evidence that royal status would no longer guarantee automatic access. Others argued that discipline had crossed into unnecessary degradation because Camilla had been forced to discover the decision publicly. The disagreement only widened the story. Then the palace responded. Its statement explained that attendance arrangements for official events were subject to formal approval, meaning entry depended on prior authorization rather than personal expectation. The wording was restrained, but its message was unmistakable. The tighter rules were real. Camilla read the statement and finally made her choice. She told Charles she did not want him to reverse the system for her. The Queen Consort understood that demanding special restoration now would only deepen the very humiliation she wanted to escape. And with that decision, the scandal finally reached its true conclusion. Not with another palace order, but with Camilla deciding what she was willing to surrender. In the end, the most important part of Camilla's humiliation was not that Buckingham Palace briefly kept her outside. It was what happened after she entered. The missing name forced Charles, William, Anne, and Camilla to confront a question they had avoided for too long. Where does family end and duty begin? No one emerged untouched. Yet the crisis produced something the palace had failed to achieve through private discussions. A boundary everyone finally understood, and a painful recognition that royal belonging could no longer mean automatic royal entitlement. Camilla accepted the new reality without another fight. The Queen Consort agreed that attendance at official royal functions would depend on the purpose of each event and the duties attached to her role, rather than on an assumed invitation. Official royal functions were events carried out on behalf of the crown, not simply family gatherings. That distinction mattered because the policy could now be applied consistently instead of being used as a weapon against one person. Charles accepted the change too. The king refused to dismantle the system, but he insisted on one safeguard. Decisions affecting senior family members had to be communicated privately before they became operational. He had seen what happened when procedure arrived before compassion, and he would not allow that humiliation to become normal. Days later, Camilla received notice that she would not attend another restricted working event. She read the message slowly, folded it, and set it aside. Disappointment remained, but humiliation did not. This time she had been told directly. The difference was small on paper and enormous emotionally. William understood the lesson as well. The prince still believed the policy itself was necessary, but he accepted that its first application had been mishandled. He resolved that discipline inside the monarchy could never depend on surprising someone into submission. Anne kept her principle intact. Princess Anne still believed duty required clear boundaries, yet she supported the new requirement for dignity and advance notice. Firmness, she now accepted, did not have to become cruelty. Charles finally spoke to Camilla in private and apologized for allowing her to learn the truth at the palace door. She accepted his words without asking him to restore what had been lost. Their peace came from accepting reality, not rewriting it. Camilla had arrived expecting entrance by right. She left understanding that the crown demanded something different. The missing name wounded her pride and divided the family, but it no longer defined her. How she accepted the boundary did. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.